right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for checking out our training online about empowering effective advocates at the federal and state levels. We're really glad to bring you this opportunity today to, in your own time, check out our advocacy tools, especially in this moment of great uncertainty and lots of changes coming at us from the federal level. It is truly more important than ever that we buckle down and do the advocacy work. And we're going to spend some time today talking about how to do that effectively. So for today's presentation, I'll start off by talking a little bit about the ARC of Massachusetts and who we are. I'll then give a brief overview of the current federal landscape and the state of Massachusetts political landscape. Then we'll go through the basics of advocacy, the who, what, where, when, why, and how. I'll give you some resources to check out our current advocacy priorities, which will be changing as we go through the year and as things change at the federal level. I'll give you some tools to share your story effectively, which is really the best way to do advocacy. And then we'll give you some tools to get started. So folks may be familiar with the ARC of Massachusetts, but I want to start off by reading our mission statement because I think it really centers the work that we're doing today. The mission of the ARC of Massachusetts is to enhance the lives of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, including autism, and their families. And we do this work through advocacy. And I think it's really important that that word is in our mission statement. Focusing on community supports and services that foster social inclusion, self-determination, and equity. Advocacy is a critical role in that, whether it's personal advocacy for yourself and the services that you need, or government legislative advocacy to make the system better as a whole. This work is really critical and at the core of what we do here at the ARC. I will introduce myself and our government affairs team, who are all available to talk through any of this, answer questions, provide you with more tools, or give you support in your advocacy journey. Our wonderful CEO, Maura Sullivan. My name is Nora Bent. I'm the Director of Government Affairs and Strategic Partnerships. And then our government affairs team is rounded out by Charlie Fisk, who's our government relations specialist. This team is made up of a lot of really powerful lived and professional experience in the advocacy space. And like I said, we'll have our contact information available at the end of this training. And please do reach out if we can ever be of support. As I said to start off, this moment is so critical that we engage in advocacy. We are facing such uncertainty. I think we're all feeling very overwhelmed and anxious, and there are many challenges before us. We're going to talk a little bit about what those are today, but we're really going to focus on what you can do. We have lots of tools on our website that go into the current priorities at the federal level or state level, but today we're really going to focus on the advocacy, on how to take that anxiety and put it into action. At the federal level, which is what we're all hearing a lot about in the news and in our communities, it is really critical to engage in advocacy. And we'll talk about how to do that tonight. But some people tell us that they feel like they don't really have to call their Congress people here in Massachusetts because they know they're going to vote the way that they want them to on things like Medicaid or education. But it's still really important to make those calls. The number of calls that legislators get and the stories that you share help them to prioritize and helps to make sure that these issues stay on the table and stay as a priority. But truly, more than ever, it's important that we double down in our state level advocacy. Regardless of what happens in DC, we can truly move the needle here and make progress for our community. And we're going to spend a little bit more time today talking about state level advocacy and how to do that effectively. Okay. So to start off, I'm going to give a brief overview of our federal legislators and some key things to know about them. And we'll have information later on about how to find your legislators and get their contact information. But in Massachusetts, we are really lucky to have the congressional delegation that you see on your screen here. All of them are true supporters of this community and the issues we work on. Again, we'll teach you in a little bit how to find who they are and find out how to contact them. But I just wanted to show this visual to give you a sense of who we're talking about here. And when you go to look at your legislators, some key things to know about them that will help you be a more informed advocate are to think about what bills they have sponsored, which means what bills they've filed, which bills they're the lead on. What bills have they co-sponsored, which means they support it. And then what relevant bills and policies historically have they worked on? Were they maybe the lead on the Autism Cares Act, which was a big piece of legislation that passed in Congress recently? You could thank them for that and then ask them to keep that advocacy up. Having some sense of their current priorities as well as historically what they've worked on is really important to help you feel confident going into those meetings or conversations, and give you some context to know who you're talking to and what they might care about. Another important part of their work is serving on committees in Congress. The list on your screen are committees that are really critical to our community. The Appropriations, Budget, and Ways and Means committees all handle the funding, revenues, taxes, how money is spent, how programs are funded. Especially right now, as we're hearing a lot about economic uncertainty and potential funding cuts, these committees are really important. And then the Energy and Commerce Committee oversees the Department of Health and Human Services and Medicaid and similar programs. And the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, sometimes called HELP, also oversees programs that are really critical. So this is a little taste of what to look for. You can find information about where your legislators sit on committees and what they've worked on online. And we're also happy to help you walk through that. I'm going to talk a little bit very quickly about the federal budget process because it's been in the news a lot, and we're at this moment kind of deep in the process. I'm not going to go through this in a lot of detail because I think it's really just important as advocates to know that this is a long process and advocacy is needed throughout. You may find yourself thinking that you have already contacted your member of Congress about the federal budget, but likely you need to do it again. Contacting them at the beginning of the process is just as important as in the middle and at the end. And it's important to know kind of where we are in that moment as you're doing advocacy. And we'll talk in a little bit about the state budget, which is a similar process. The words are a little different, the terms and phrases might change, but for the most part, it's a similar type of process. So it starts in the winter when the president puts his or her proposal forward. This is based on requests from federal agencies who report on their funding needs and what they may need. This is often a great opportunity to see what the priorities and policy goals of the administration are, and whether we agree with them or not. It gives us a sense of what the landscape is and what we might be focusing on. Congress then sets some targets for revenues and spending. This is a non-binding framework that kind of guides them through the process. This is what we heard about recently with billions of dollars of cuts to Medicaid being included in this budget resolution. Again, it's not binding, but it gives us a sense of what advocacy we need to be doing moving forward to make sure that those programs are protected. And then in the spring and summer, there are separate appropriations, which are funding bills done by category of issue that allocate funding. And then for certain programs that are called mandatory spending, such as Medicaid, Social Security, there's a special process that can move things through a little bit more quickly. We'll get there when we get there, and we'll loop people into that process as we get there. And then the budget's wrapped up hopefully by the end of September. But again, this is not a beginning and end process. We really need to be pushing throughout. I know that was a very quick federal overview, but we want to be really mindful of your time today and focus on the top level things that you need to know to be an effective advocate. So I'm now going to transition to our state of Massachusetts and engaging in advocacy in that space. Um, Again, I'm not going to talk through this slide in a lot of detail. This is the general legislative process in Massachusetts. In the state, we operate on a 2-year session. We just began a new session in January of 2025, and we'll be in this session through 2026. There are 7,000-ish bills filed for this session, and all bills move through a process that you'll see on your screen here. Bills are filed in the first January of the session, and bills are really just ideas and concerns, thinking about how to make our communities better and how to make government work better for communities of all shapes and sizes. So they get filed, they go to a committee that's based on subject matter. For example, the Children, Families, and Persons with Disabilities Committee is where a lot of our priority bills go. That committee holds a hearing and accepts testimony from members of the public, advocates, and other legislators. The committee then decides what to do with the bill. They can change it, they can move it forward, or they can decide not to advance it, and it can sort of die in committee. Then hopefully the bill moves to one branch, either the House or Senate, where it's taken up for a vote. Often there are changes or amendments made at this point, which are legislators' attempts to change the bill. The bill then passes with likely some of those changes, moves to the second branch, again, either the House or Senate. That branch goes through a similar process of filing amendments and may pass a version that's a little different from what the House or Senate passed first. Those versions are then negotiated in what's called a conference committee made up of members from each branch. Hopefully an agreement is reached and that proposal is sent to the governor and then hopefully becomes law. This is a very nuanced process, so I gave you the simplified version, but definitely connecting with us, we will walk you through this on specific bills as we go through the process and help you know when to advocate. The state budget is one of the most critical bills that the legislature passes every year. It is a large bill. The current FY26 budget is $62 billion, and it funds everything in our communities from roads and bridges to schools, to community day programs. It is a really comprehensive funding and policy document. And it is what focuses our advocacy in this January to July period. Again, I'm not going to talk about the specifics here, but want to show the flow of it. We engage in advocacy at every step in this process. So again, you might see action alerts or information and think that you've already done it or already know the information. We need you to do it again, advocating to the House of Representatives in April and the Senate in May and the conference committee in June. All of those are really key moments in the process. Okay. Now that you have the basics of our federal landscape and our state landscape, I'm going to take you through the who, what, when, where, and why of advocacy. And this is for the state and federal level. The terms may be different and what you're advocating for may change, but the nuts and bolts of how to do it are the same across branches and levels of government. So the who of who you're advocating to. At the state level, based on where you live, everyone has one state representative and one state senator. And then the governor oversees the entire state of Massachusetts. In total, there are 160 members in the Massachusetts House of Representatives and 40 members in the Senate. But you really have to worry about the 2 that are in your community and represent you. The map that you see on the left side of their screen is a tool that's available on the Massachusetts Legislature's website. where you can put in your address and it will show you who your legislators are and how to contact them. At both the state and federal levels, working with their staff are really critical. Staff are often the ones researching bills, logging the concerns and opinions of constituents, and maybe the one to answer the phone or meet you in person. This is a great opportunity to educate that staff member, influence them, and that will all get reported back to their elected official. At the federal level, it's a little bit different, but the same general structure. Um, you have one representative, one congressperson, again, based on where you live. The map on the screen here shows the 9 congressional districts across Massachusetts, and at the end, we'll share a link to find your specific congressperson. At the federal level, we have 2 senators who cover the entire state. And then, of course, the president is the equivalent of the governor covering the entire country. In total, there are about 535 members of Congress. So it's a quite larger group than our state legislature. But again, you need to worry about your 1 representative and the 2 senators. And again, staff are critical in these offices as well. What is advocacy, both at the state and federal level? Advocacy is really about using your voice to influence and educate. Your lived or professional experience may be what a legislator needs to hear to focus on an issue. You may know more than they do about the intricacies of providing health care or accessing a day program because you live it. They may not have that lived experience. So sharing that with them as a way to influence and educate them is really what advocacy is all about. It's about communicating clearly and working collaboratively. None of us need to reinvent the wheel. All of us here at the ARC are happy to work with you to connect you to our advocacy efforts, coalitions, and legislators so that you can really build those relationships and share your stories. Where do I advocate? It's probably the #1 question we get. And the short answer is that you can advocate in a lot of different ways, virtually, over the phone, or email, and I'll talk about our action alerts in a minute. In person, your legislators live in your communities. They often hold office hours where you can go meet them for a cup of coffee and talk about the issues that matter to you. They may hold town halls or local events. And then, of course, you're always welcome to join the ARC at the State House. You can go on our website and see any upcoming events that we have. Our action alerts are really the key here. We have a tool online where you can sign up to be on our email list, and we will notify you when action is needed. In an action alert, we will provide you with everything you need to know to contact your legislators, the bill number, the issue, the messaging, and all you have to do is put in your information and it will go to your elected officials. You can always customize them or use them and build off of them to share your story, but they're a great tool to get started. When you advocate, as I said before, it's a long process and advocacy is needed throughout, and the types of advocacy change depending on where we are in the session. So again, plugging into our action alerts is a really critical way to stay informed on the status of bills and what's needed. Why advocacy is important. I think all of you are watching this training because you know why it's important. You're able to support something you care about, and it has a significant impact on funding and access to services. Your policymakers, your elected officials, they want to hear from you. Their job is to hear from you. You can help them understand the issues that impact you and your family. Again, you may have lived experience that they don't. You may be able to educate them about what it's really like to live in your shoes and be in your family and your community. Advocacy really helps lawmakers to prioritize, and I think that's what it's really all about. Especially right now, there is so much going on. Lawmakers who get multiple calls from constituents about work, that's going to help them prioritize those issues and work on them effectively. how you advocate effectively. I'm going to talk about sharing your story in a minute because that's really the ultimate way of doing it. But being really organized and clear, the process can be confusing. So being really upfront about your ask and what you're working on is important. Staying persistent, this is a long process, like I've said, so really staying motivated throughout, building relationships and remembering that every interaction really makes a difference, whether it's with the elected official or staff or over email. The numbers matter, the amount of advocacy matters, and it all goes toward the greater good. All right, sharing your story, as I said, is really the ultimate way to do this. You are the expert on your story and your life. You do not need to be an expert in the policy details, how much a bill costs, what section of Mass General laws it changes. You don't have to worry about any of that. What you have to do is be really clear and concise and connect your story to an issue. Explaining the key points of your story, what's compelling, what's the impact on you or your family, and then what do you want your legislators to do? That will be their first question. They will say, thank you for sharing that. How can I help? And again, we can help you connect you with that ask and provide that information. Following up with their offices is important and practicing is important. This is a muscle that we all learn to use. So feel free to practice with your neighbors, with us, any way to feel comfortable. And as I've said before, policy can be complicated and the process can be long, but stories really center the work and help lawmakers understand why change is needed. Okay. We have a little checklist here for you to get started. Of course, registering to vote and voting in every election is really important. Finding your federal legislators, here is the link to do that. We encourage you to sign up for their newsletters and follow them on social media and reach out to introduce yourself. Same for your state lawmakers. The link to find them is there. Our newsletter link to sign up. And then signing up for our action alerts and the ARC of the United States action alerts. We are really lucky to have the ARC of the US as a partner, and they have a similar action alert system to help you stay up to date on federal actions and write directly to your federal lawmakers.